I think sometimes mockery in politics is an important means of showing that what is happening is sublimely ridiculous. But actually this is quite worrying, isn't it? That parents haven't been informed, that children have been pressurised by schools for saying things that would seem perfectly rational. For a child to be told off for saying you can't really be a cat seems to be fundamentally unreasonable.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's a lot to unpack here, and we can only hope that that was an extreme example and that teacher was particularly misinformed and uninformed about the law as well. But it does beg a wider question, doesn't it, about how we've got to this point, because we can laugh about the silly animal identities, but actually this is very closely linked to the idea of gender identity that so many, we know thousands and thousands of children are now telling teachers, telling parents that they identify as the opposite gender to their birth sex. And obviously this is a problem that is now, increasing in schools, and that the government has said that it will sort out with this guidance. But taking a step back, what's happened here is that we've forgotten what it means to be adults, and we've forgotten that loving children is not about giving them what they want, but about wanting what's best for them. And I think it's very clear from the evidence that it is not the best thing for children to tell them that they can be a different gender from their birth sex, to affirm feelings of discomfort that actually mean that they could be the opposite sex. I don't think that's loving at all. I think that's, really a failure of the duty of care of adults and of parents. And, the government is going to have a tough time trying to fix this. But I do think strong, firm boundaries backed up by law will make a huge difference to schools.
And isn't it also of fundamental importance that it's the parents who take responsibility for children, not other authorities, unless by order of the court, because the parents aren't fit parents, which is a tiny, tiny minority. Parents have the greatest concern and love for their own children and are the best positioned to understand the issues and the difficulties children are facing and to help them if they are having these sorts of discussions, rather than schools or social workers.
Absolutely. The best way to keep a child safe is to maintain their relationship with their parents. I mean, that's absolutely true. It's the first rule of safeguarding. And so it is wrong that schools have been concealing these safeguarding issues from parents. And don't forget, if a child does reveal, let's say that they have discomfort with their body, that is a safeguarding red flag, because so often these feelings come with many other conditions. Autism, children experience bullying or abuse. They are things that need to be investigated, not just accepted. And so, of course, parents should be involved. But I do think we need to separate the issues of parental involvement, which is absolutely paramount, and what parents can actually consent to. Because if the leak that you mentioned is correct, the new guidance, the draft guidance at the moment says that as long as parents consent, then a child can be socially transitioned at school. Now, I don't agree with that, because, we wouldn't allow a parent to say, I want my child to have this particular drug. If the doctor is saying, no, hang on, that's not the best thing for your child can't have that, the parent doesn't have the rights to demand that. The same with, a parent couldn't say, I want my child to drink alcohol in the school premises. It doesn't matter if the parent consents. The rule is no. And so I think we need to have the same kind of approach here. We don't socially transition children because it's not the best thing for them. There isn't the evidence for it, whether or not the parent consents.
But to what extent do the principles apply that apply over contraception, which were settled by the courts some decades ago, that contraception could be issued to children without the parents' consent and that the parents didn't have to be informed? Does the same principle apply in this case?
Well, I don't think it does, and I'm not a lawyer, but contraception is obviously, a medical treatment, if you like, or, certainly something that can be medically prescribed with a known outcome and known potential risks. So you could therefore argue that a child of a certain age could make their own decision about what are the potential benefits and risks of taking that particular treatment, because it's known. The thing about social transition is unknown. We do not know what kind of outcomes this kind of psychological intervention on children will have. And you've probably been following the government's new guidance for the gender clinics, and the NHS has now decided that puberty blockers cannot be given to children except as part of an agreed and ethical experimental study. So, if we're going to go down this route of saying we can transition children, well, it is an experiment. We've got to admit that. So I would say that the rules, I think they're called Gillick competence, around the contraception argument don't apply, because the risks and the potential benefits of socially transitioning are not known. So how could any child consent to that?
OK, if I remember right, it was Victoria Gillick who brought the case. But would you say that if these drugs, which the NHS has now said can't be prescribed, if it said they could be, would that be something that could be done confidentially? Or do you still think that this is such a serious level of change that parents would have to be informed?
Well, I think parents absolutely would have to be informed. But, I do think we shouldn't be giving them to children because, some advocates for them say that they're reversible. There isn't that evidence that we don't know that they're reversible. They could inhibit brain development. And certainly the vast majority of children who start on puberty blockers do end up going on to cross-sex hormones, which give permanent, life-changing results. And I don't think any child should be taking those kind of decisions. But of course, we're not talking about that kind of medical intervention in schools here. We're talking about changing the social aspects of a child's life, their pronouns, their names, toilets they use, which often can be the first step on this transition. But at the moment, schools are allowing this to happen, and I think the government should put a stop to that.
And will this be in the government guidelines, and will this be the law and enforceable, or will schools be pretty free to carry on doing what they like?
So I don't know, obviously, yet what's in the guidance. It's still being drafted. Obviously, I very much want it to say that schools do not have the authority and the training to transition children and make that very clear. But in terms of no, it's not statutory, and I think the government should make it statutory because otherwise...
Unfortunately, we're going to have to draw it to close there, but